So first item of the agenda is introductions. I'll start, and then we can go around the table. And then if the people who are remote want to, members of the public don't have to identify, but they certainly can if they'd like. My name is George Tolomsis. I'm the planning board rep on the committee, and I'm the vice chair. And at the behest of the current chair, I facilitate these meetings. Hannah, do you want to go next?
Yes, I'm Hannah Reckshoffen, Chair and Member at Large.
I'm Amy Kaling. I am the Chair of the Planning and Economic Development Department, and I am a non-voting member.
I'm Mary Chickwin. I'm a public member.
Greta Schwachman, Food Service Director, Youth Representative.
Yes.
Nancy Hazard, member at large.
Jonah Keane, member at large.
Yeah.
And as was mentioned, two other department heads are members based on their roles. Eric is the Director of Planning and Development, and you said he's out today. And Marlo is the Director of the DPW, and we're not sure, right? We're waiting. See if
Yes.
and the other three slots you were talking about, Hannah,
Yeah.
we don't yet have a Energy and Sustainability Director. It would be another automatic slot. And apparently we don't have a city council rep appointed to replace Phil Elmer.
Not yet, that I've heard.
And lastly, there's another public member slot that had been vacant since Kim left, I think, a few months ago.
Yes.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that might be something we'd alert the new mayor to as well, because that's a mayoral appointee.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next step, because this is the start of the year for this committee, and so we do a committee reorganization. We have three officer positions on this committee: chair, vice chair, and clerk. Typically, you start with chair and go from there. And just to point out, I did double check Robert's rules. Nominations do not need to be seconded. So nominations
Interesting.
can be of someone else, or they can be of oneself. So opening the nominations for chair. Yes.
I would like
Yes,
to
Nancy,
nominate
thanks.
Jonah as chair.
Thank you.
And we don't have to second, or?
You don't need a
No
second.
second is necessary. It's commonly done, but I double checked. It's not necessary. You can if you want. Are there any other nominations?
Well,
I would like to
how
know.
does the conversation, how does the process work? Do we nominate everybody first and then discuss? Or,
That's correct.
Yeah.
We see how many people want to be nominated, and we always check if the person is willing to serve. If there was only one nomination, you would just the person would essentially by acclamation be put into that role. If there are more than one, then you would have a vote. Sometimes, for discretion's sake, the vote is done by secret ballot, but we haven't had much experience with that in this committee, I don't think. So I would like to nominate Mary for the role as chair. And I should have asked Jonah, is that a position you'd be willing to fill?
I would reluctantly be willing, but I would be curious to see if others were interested, just because of time. I think it needs time given to it, and
Yeah.
mine is limited at the moment.
Mhm.
Thank you. And Mary, you've been nominated. Do you have any response to that?
I'm possibly willing to serve. I'd be interested in having a little conversation about what the makeup of the group will be.
Mhm.
I'm also, I don't know if this is the time for conversation or if we have any other nominations before we do that, George.
Yep. But it sounds like you're not close to it. So,
Correct.
yes, Hannah.
Have we ever considered, or are we allowed to consider a co-chair situation if we had two folks that were maybe reluctant and a little time bound, but possibly willing to. Would that be a change to our bylaws in some way that we would have to go through? I see your face.
I think that the regs call for a chair and a co-chair. Of course, those two could divvy up responsibilities as would be most effective, just like I have facilitated these meetings at
Yeah.
your behest as vice chair. So
Thank God.
I wonder if there's anything in the rules and regulations. I mean, basically, the charter says we make up our own rules and regulations, which we did. So I don't know if that gives us also the flexibility to go ahead and decide we want a shared position, because I would be open to that if you are. Jen.
Let me look.
Yeah, I guess the question would be if there would be a real benefit, time saving of that, from that. There have to be clear divvying of roles to make it a time savings, otherwise we'd both be working on stuff instead of one person.
I can, if we're talking about it, I'm happy to speak to that
Yeah.
question.
yeah,
if
let me
that's
just
something-
ask, are there any other nominations?
Oh,
Seeing none.
Well,
Go ahead.
I just say, I would have confidence in anybody to do it in the group. And I think this is an important role, and somebody who has the ability to put effort and time, who has like time in their life to give to it, would be whoever has that. I think everybody could do it effectively, but that's my thought. Yeah.
My thought about it too is, since we're just starting to update a couple of the chapters, specifically in land use and natural resources, and presumably that's where we will steer the committee after that. We'll have, I feel like we probably would have a more clear focus of where we would put our energy into these new chapters. It might be beneficial to have somebody who has that natural resource land use kind of background.
Which both of you have.
Right.
Yeah, so. When I
Okay.
was,
Go ahead.
when I
Nancy.
was the chair, I worked very closely with the vice chair. So that's, I mean, I think you get to choose, what that relationship is. So that's another way of getting something that's effectively a co-chair, but maybe not on paper.
Hannah.
I think just from my recent experience, I think there are a couple sort of different things that really tug on time. One is the administrative aspect, which is getting the agenda out on time, making sure it's posted on the city website, which when we had Lori from the Office of Energy and Sustainability, she was so on top of a lot of those things. And when she left, I was not always clear on what some of those responsibilities were. And so I think that's something, maybe it doesn't even have to be the chair that does that, but anyone who is really good at staying on top of those things. And then the other piece of it, I feel, is the direction of the committee. And I think that's where, we had a lot of ideas when I took this role over that then because of COVID got shifted. And I feel like we kind of I bounced a little bit around sort of what were we trying to do with the special guests and then the priorities, which in retrospect, whatever. But I think whoever's in the chair position, having a really clear sense of where we're going. I mean, I'd be willing to continue doing just the administrative stuff. It's like, I have time for that, but I don't have time right now to really be visioning and leading. And that's the thing that I think the chair is so invaluable in.
Yeah, I agree.
That's
Oh,
a great
call-
offer.
Happy to do that. I can make an agenda all
And I
day.
think I don't know if Anna from my department is the official staff person now for this, but felt like that was a little bit in flux. So I think if we
Yeah.
could formalize that, I know Anna and Christian both, I'm sure would be
She's
willing.
not here,
to-
so we could volunteer.
Yeah.
She's on a beach. But I'm sure that we could,
Yeah.
we could make sure that the meeting gets posted on time. And if our staff was given an agenda, we could do that back end, you know.
Nice. I'll call myself just to say, Mary, the reason I was thinking of you, this role is both the functions Han was talking about, both I've had a sense since you've been on the committee, a broad visioning of the kind of things we work on and a deep understanding of a lot of the issues. And also I've seen you be quite detail oriented, noticing when we missed the December deadline and also some follow-up items you sent out in the last few days. So that was what inspired me to recommend you as chair.
Thank you.
I
Um,
very much support that as well.
So we have two nominations for chair. You both expressed varying degrees of willingness.
Well,
if-
I think if you're willing, I think that we should have one candidate, if you're willing to do it, because I'm just not at the right, I have two little kids that take up most of my waking moments. So.
And thank you, Jonah. And Mary, you're still willing to serve.
Yeah, this is a little bit out of order, but I'm just kind of curious if there's a potential for you, George, to continue to serve in the vice chair position as you've done, because you bring, just as you've said, I bring certain qualities to the committee. I feel like your organizational skills in the meeting itself are just fantastic, and that's something that I don't feel that I would necessarily excel at. So.
Well, thank you. And this is being recorded, right? No, I'm just kidding. No, thank you.
Agreed.
Thank you very much for that. And I would be honored to continue to serve in that role if that's the will of the committee.
Definitely.
Well, then I have a better comfort level with this.
Okay. Should we pro forma just go ahead then? We have one nominee, all in favor of Mary as chair for the coming year. Aye.
Aye.
And Mary, are you abstaining? I couldn't tell. I couldn't see your hand. Or are you voting no?
That's fine. I voted yes.
Okay, thank you. I couldn't. You're all pretty small on my screen. Thank you. Okay, next is the role of vice chair. Nominations.
Nominate George.
Thank you again. Are there any other
Since we can't
nominations?
second, what do? I have to say I'll nominate George.
Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Seeing and hearing none. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All in favor? Aye. Unanimous again. Thank you. And then we do have the role of clerk. Do we have any nominate? I know that we talked about having staff availability. I don't know exactly how, because
What is the role?
we used to get staff who took notes, but that has stopped. So I don't think we can assume that. So is there anyone who would like to make a nomination for clerk for this committee?
You were the clerk? Were you-
She's been
No.
taking notes.
Or just note
recently.
taker, but not the official
Right.
clerk? Oh, okay.
And I can do some of that still, since George will be running the meeting, but we need an official clerk too.
Right.
I think.
Hannah, you were raising your hand?
So I'm just looking at the rules and regs because I was trying to acquaint myself a little bit with what the clerk actually does. And I'm not really clear on that.
Well,
Oh, the clerk. Oh, the clerk. Responsible
You
for
want to read it for us?
contacting. Sure. The clerk shall be responsible for contacting committee members at least 3 working days prior to each regular meeting, a notice of the meeting, the agenda of the meeting, and minutes of the previous meeting. So I was clerk and chair,
Oh.
and Phil was slacking
And it sounds
at
like,
recorded.
it sounds like you
I
were
didn't
offering to be the
realize.
clerk a little bit earlier in this meeting.
Good night.
Yeah.
The clerk shall be responsible for keeping full and accurate records of all regular and special meetings. The clerk shall be responsible for maintaining the official copy of the committee's rules and regs. The clerk shall immediately post all amendments and changes to the rules and regs. The clerk shall act as the corresponding agent of the committee, preserving copies of all correspondence, and shall perform all other duties incident to the office that may be required by the committee. The clerk shall be responsible for transmitting copies of all votes, orders, resolutions, and documents which are to be sent to members of the committee, and shall promptly notify subcommittee members of their appointment, of the reference of any matter to them, so on, so on. So there's quite a lot here that we were not really having the clerk do. Mary?
Yes, Mary.
All right.
Yeah, so one thought I have is that there are currently 3 positions vacant. And it seems like the description that you're reading really should fall to somebody who works for the city and who can just get those things done. Instead of then, say I were the clerk and I did something and then I had to hand it off to somebody else, just doesn't really make sense. So I wonder if this is something we can
Yeah.
table until the next meeting.
And this is all stuff that Lori was doing too, which I think we just didn't really refurbish when she left.
I'll call on myself for a second. I could just tell my experience on the planning board. We do have a clerk, and but typically the functions of the clerk, especially the minute taking, is taken care of by Eric as the staff to the planning board, except when he can't be there at a meeting. Then the clerk does need to take the minutes. So it's not clear that we have a dedicated staff person who would actually take the minutes.
Right.
So
And
yes, Lisa.
And we do, at the moment, Justin Twiddell, who is, I think, in the Office of Energy and Sustainability, did introduce himself to me a few months ago as our sort of liaison to putting the agenda on the website. He didn't mention any of the rest of this, but I don't know if it could be something that we could say, maybe I don't know if he's currently working under Eric until that position gets filled, but I don't know if these are tasks that we potentially could say to Justin, does this fall into your understanding of serving our committee? I just don't know how that was sort of presented. I think it's been hot potatoed a little.
And I think that would be delicate because it would be that person's supervisor who would
Right,
indicate
and
that was part of their duties. So
we don't, yeah,
that person isn't in there yet.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
I did hear that there was, because of this, we're getting a refreshed orientation to the role of the clerk, and we have a number of people not here. It was suggested to defer this vote till next month. Is that someone want to make a motion to that effect?
I move to defer this, the nomination of the clerk until the next meeting, February.
A second.
Is there discussion?
I have a quick question in that case.
Yeah.
Of who would the agenda posting and setting fall to in that case?
For next meeting.
I'll take care of that.
Awesome. Then I'm for it. Just don't want to drop any more.
Any further discussion of that? Seeing none. All in favor? Aye. Looks pretty unanimous. Great. We're 2/3 reorganized.
Well done.
And go ahead. Yes.
Well, should we express our gratitude to Hannah for serving in that role? Two roles apparently
Yes,
for
sorry.
a few years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2, 3.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Sorry
Yes,
for
thank you very
dropping.
much. Ed.
All right.
Yeah, it's not usual.
All right.
And glad to be able to continue working with the committee with a little less
Yes.
distraction of all that pressure. So
Yes.
nice. So the next item is the Conway School Student Project update from the subcommittee. I don't know who's starting off with that. Do we want to identify who's on that subcommittee just for?
Yeah, the three of us plus Eric.
And then the three people from Conway School,
Mhm.
but that we're working with.
And I was thinking Eric would probably provide the update.
That's what I.
That as well.
Yeah.
But in his absence, I'm sure any one of us could do that.
Happy to start. You could fill.
Okay, great.
So we're meeting, there's a team of 3 from Conway. They are updating 2 chapters of the master plan for us, the land use and the natural resource, cultural and historical resource.
Yes.
Seems like I've said resources too many times. That chapter. And so their focus is redoing those 2 chapters. They are going to be doing 2 community engagement events. So there's been a focus on planning the first one, which is going to be Monday, February 5th.
6:30 PM, John's on.
Yeah, I saw something about it, but I don't think it had a time. I remember thinking, when is it?
6:30 right now.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep, so we'll be sending the invitation out tomorrow. We'll be starting to disseminate it widely.
This will be the first of 2. They'll do another one a month or so later. And at the moment, the 4 of us are meeting with the 3 of them once a week on Zoom just to check in and help move it along.
And I can provide a little bit more information about the sort of direction in which they are going at this point. For anybody who doesn't know, Conway School is an extremely accelerated 1-year master's program. So the students go from 0 to 60 right away. So within 3 weeks of starting the project, they're putting together a community outreach event. So that's a big lift for them to do. And when we met earlier this week, we talked about this idea of reflecting on the history of Greenfield and talking about where we are now, and then really focusing on what the future might look like through the lens of, the climate crisis, and also focusing specifically on land use and natural resources. And I think some of the words we talked about were like natural abundance and economic prosperity. So they're, really thinking about how to engage people in difficult topics, because, there's a lot of opposing viewpoints about where Greenfield's at. Greenfield's great or Greenfield's terrible or whatever. And how can we bring those people together at the same table who surely have some vision of what a future Greenfield could look like, and then, engage them in conversations about that. So that's their plan for that night. So I think that's where we're at this point. Think of anything else?
It's a quick process. They're going to be done in March and end of March. So it's pretty quick.
They have a huge amount of material, as you can only imagine, to look at. I mean, like the master plan itself is this huge thing. And then there's several other plans that the city had already, that they're looking at that, and they're looking at maps, and they're looking at, it's quite amazing. And it's up to the Greenfield team, us, to do the outreach, because that's not their bailiwick. So that's what I've been working on, is trying to, and I reached out to a lot of organizations in Greenfield and everyone to see if they could spread the word for us, and they all said yes. I mean, it's great. So it's too late to ask if I forgot anybody, because Mary's been doing the graphic, which is also great. I don't know if you've got it right there, but so I think the turnout should be great. I guess, yeah.
And one thing related to what Nancy was saying is that one of the things that the students will do is to look at the old priorities and action items from the 2014 plan, And they have documents from this group saying what's been done, and so they'll pull those other action items from the previous plan and sort of vet them through us as to whether or not they're still relevant, whether they belong in the new plan, or, you know, sort of what to do with them. So they're not leaving that old plan behind.
Yeah, I'm very excited about the outcome, the potential outcome of this, and feel very privileged to be able to be in the core team and to meet with them once a week. It's
Yeah.
really exciting. It's fun. Lots of enthusiasm and youthful energy and, yeah, and and I don't know that much about the topic as much as these two do. So there's, you know, a lot for me to learn, which is fun.
Thank you. For people who aren't on the subcommittee, any questions or comments?
Should we all be attending this event on the 5th? What like format does this take? So we're doing outreach for it, but they're planning it?
Yeah,
or-
so they'll be doing some sort of presentation,
Okay,
and then they'll be leading some sort of group activities.
They're leading the event. The event itself is led
Yeah.
by them.
great.
Yeah.
Is there,
So, yeah,
is there
For
food?
ideas, it's the opportunity for
Should have the dreams on the table.
Listen.
So please come.
So, yeah, you should definitely come.
Yeah, no, I'd love to
That'd
come.
be great.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure what time it was, so I'll keep an eye out for the
Okay.
flyer, and I'm happy to also share the
Great.
flyer on our social media.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was one other thing, is just when we send that flyer out, we'll be sure that all of the members get it, and that besides the outreach, some of you already know you're doing, you can also share it to your networks. That would be great.
Before they complete the project, is there gonna be like a phase where we all get some sort of rough draft that we look at and make a final approval as a committee?
Yeah, that's going to be the second public meeting. Then
Okay,
that's it. 2 meetings. Input and review.
okay.
I'll call myself. Is this, I know it's less easy to do at the John's On, but is this planned to be a hybrid meeting?
It is not. Just because the group felt that there wouldn't be a way to give a meaningful experience for somebody who's trying to live stream it and then somehow trying to interact. It would just be too difficult to try to manage those aspects. But there will be other outreach in the form of a survey or some other form that people could do online, still to be developed, that will essentially present the same types of materials, so that people will have access to the presentation the Conway School does at the beginning of the meeting, and then they'll be able to answer or somehow engage with the same topics that the folks will who are at the meeting that night.
So it's being recorded, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Great.
Be great to put that on
Um,
the web page.
And so they'll be making recommendations of essentially adjustments to or additions to these chapters and the steps or additional updated steps. Is that?
I'm going to say there's a new chapter when they finish.
Okay.
Yeah, which will include some of the goals from 2014 are not accomplished. So some of those may still be very similar in the new chapter, but others have been accomplished, so won't be there. So, but they're talking about presenting it even in a slightly different way. So it will be a whole new chapter, although some of the content could be familiar.
And to Greta's point, is that something that this is envisioned this committee would vote to approve those changes, or has that been? But
Yeah, I don't know I don't know. They're going to give us a final project, but as far as making it the official part of the master plan, I don't know what the process is for that.
Well, what we did the last time, as you probably remember, George, that the planning board accepted it and the city council did not have to.
Right.
correct.
So maybe that's the step as it goes to the planning board.
I was wondering about that too, because
Good question.
I will, at our next meeting, be clear to the planning board about where the process is at, and it is different than the initial process, but it's kind of parallel to it, so it would be good to have the planning board in the mix with this. But you're right, it did get approval by the council, though that was not a necessity. It's technically a planning board document.
So would it be a separate document or would it somehow be like spliced into the original document?
I think that remains to be seen. I think that there's still lots of unknowns in terms of kind of how the new administration might want to see this adopted, and so that's information that we don't yet have. There's benefits and challenges to using somebody like the Conway School. The benefit is that it's quite affordable. The challenge is that you don't get a complete plan, right? You don't get the new plan that replaces the old plan. So we'll have to figure out what we want to do about that.
Was there some sort of discussion about like future, like, can we arrange something with them or like maybe every year or like every other year they pick chapters to work on, or would they not want to work with us in that manner? I know we're kind of lucky to get them to help us at all, but.
So as a Conway School alum, I can say that I know that Conway School frequently like to have projects that would go for more than 1 year to give the students an opportunity to work off of a previous, work product and then to see it through to fruition. So I don't think it's out of the question, but it also does cost money. So.
And who's paying for it again?
And we also picked these two chapters because they're a little more in the wheelhouse of the Conway schools. So the other chapters are a little more outside their,
Okay.
what they're getting trained on.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'll just respond to what you were saying, Mary, about the administration. Similar to, I think, wanting to have buy-in from the city council, there was at the time this one was implemented originally, wanted to have buy-in from the mayor, but it's a planning board document. So
Okay.
the planning board approving it is the kind of final. It had been Roxanne Wiedegardner who had initiated the type of that it was a sustainable master plan, but that was when she was the chair of the planning board, not as mayor. So just to be clear on the relative roles there. Any other thoughts or questions about this?
Well, back to what you were asking about, I think that we'll have to figure out how we're going to, how we're going to sort of peddle it once we have the finished product. It'll be up to us to decide, are we going to feature that as, here's the new piece of the master plan, or how we're going to do it. That'll be something we'll have to talk about.
Our role of this committee.
Exactly.
Implementation.
Yeah.
Be fun to have something new to work off of. Yeah.
Well, thank you to the three of you for that extra work you're putting in. It sounds like it's been something that's taken some time and effort, but is going nicely. So thank you.
Thank you.
Should we move on? Next item is the U.S. Forest Service tree grant report from Mary.
Yeah, so I sent that to you as an attachment. Is it?
Yes,
I'm wondering if somebody can share it.
yes, and it was also in the email that went out for this meeting.
Yeah, but can we share it on the screen so that the public can see it?
Yeah,
George, can you do that if you can find it?
I think Amy,
Oh, I wonder if he's in the Zoom.
are we still plugging it to your computer? or
We are
it's
not,
always
but
through
I-
there?
I wonder if I plug it in, unless George, do you think you can share?
Boy, that would be a stretch.
Well, this is gonna be a stretch too, but we'll give it a go. Oh,
I've
I'm not in
never
the
screen
Zoom
shared.
meeting.
Oh,
Oh,
there it is.
oh, there it is.
But is that?
Oh, no,
Can you see that?
Who did
George?
that?
that's me.
Oh, you posted
No,
it.
No, she.
can you see that, George?
I cannot.
Or do you see us?
Okay.
Because I'm not, if
'Cause
you,
you're
over
not
there
in
is
the
a
Zoom
share
meeting.
screen button on that box, so.
Oh, maybe it's in the more section. Maybe it's in a breakout room.
Just.
Sure, stop video, view. Oh, viewing locally. Oh, view.
Viewing locally. Share to meeting.
Yeah.
Share to meeting.
Yes, I see it.
Let's get us going.
That's amazingly easy.
It's supposed to be PowerPoint. Can you go into presentation view with that by any chance?
Oh, PowerPoint presentation.
And importantly, Stephanie and Ryan can
Oh,
see
it
it as
does.
well.
Sorry?
I said importantly, Stephanie and Ryan.
Yes, we can see it,
as well.
yes.
We can see it,
Great.
There we go.
Great.
Yeah, it's,
I don't-
says it's a PDF.
This is good. We've got page one,
it's a PowerPoint.
Yeah.
and then we can move to page two.
You can leave it, okay, can you zoom out just a little bit? Okay, you can just stop right there.
And then I can scroll when you're ready. to
Yeah,
scroll.
thanks. Yeah, so now I have my Greenfield Tree Committee hat on as the chair of the Greenfield Tree Committee. I just wanted to report on the US Forest Service grant that we wrapped up in 2023. And this was really, when I say we, it was the city of Greenfield who received the grant from the US Forest Service. And that the purpose of the grant was to enable the planting of up to 800 street trees or trees in public spaces. And then was also supposed to finance a regional tree nursery and some public outreach and things like that. And so what I'm reporting on is the piece that I know the most about that the tree committee was involved in, which was the planting of the trees and the startup of the nursery. So all told, over the 5-year grant period, we planted just over 700 trees. DPW planted over 400 of those, and then the tree committee planted about 270 trees. And we were thwarted, as you can see on the little graph, in 2020 by the start of COVID and, really some unknown ways to proceed with gathering in public spaces to do public tree plantings, things like that. And then again, and we were back on track in 2021, and then 2022, we got hit by the statewide drought and water bans, so we were not able to finish planting in that year. So really, all told, given the various hurdles along the way, we still did really well in planting trees in public spaces throughout Greenfield. And if you scroll down, for Greenfield Tree Committee's part, we hosted a number of community tree planting events, and those happened at parks such as at the Blunt Field and at public spaces like the Jay-Z Center. But it also happened along streets such as Davis and Pierce, over in housing authority properties such as Elm Terrace. So we really tried to target areas that were in most need of trees. And we really tried to also engage the public. And toward the end of the process, we really learned that a vital piece of the planting was getting people to buy in and do the aftercare, doing the watering. And that seems pretty obvious, but it really took us a few years to figure out that made our lives much easier if neighbors would take on the watering of the trees. So then the next page. So in the meantime, there was this quite a large chunk of change to pay for the startup of a regional tree nursery. At the same time that Greenfield got this US Forest Service grant, Montague and North Adams also had similar grants. And so the idea was that there would be a regional nursery that would feed those 3 communities, thereby cutting down on the cost of going out and buying trees. Even at wholesale prices, they're super expensive. But in the end, no organization, no entity could be identified to do a regional nursery. So Greenfield Tree Committee stepped up and said, we'll start a nursery. And so we started a nursery over at Just Roots. We're leasing a little subleasing from them, from the city-owned land. And we have planted 165 whips in the nursery. And just to visualize that, the whips are really like 6 or 8 feet tall. And we're not talking about little. I mean, they typically will stay in the nursery for 2 or 3 years, some longer, but many of them are moving out, ready to plant within a couple of years. This was just a nerdy statistic for folks for the Greenfield Tree Committee, how much water we were using to irrigate at the nursery over at Buster's. And it was almost $40,000 or 40,000 gallons in the season. And so right now we currently have about 160 trees in the nursery. Many of them are ready to go. They'll be ready to plant in this next season. And I should just mention that we're growing primarily shade trees, primarily native shade trees, but we also grow small trees for planting under power lines and in other places where a larger tree just won't fit. And then there's one more. I don't remember what it was. Oh yeah, so, you know, Greenfield Tree Committee took on this task of starting this nursery, and we added up all the various costs that the grant paid for, and it was almost $70,000 worth of materials that it took to start this business, not really business, but this enterprise up. So we would never have been able to do it. I mean, it would have taken a really long time to start up like this. And over the course of the 5 years, we put in over 4,000 volunteer hours in planting and growing trees. So that's a little,
Thing.
yeah.
It's awesome.
So, yeah, it was a very, very successful program. Yeah, really good. And I, you know, one thing that this doesn't reflect is just how beneficial the grant was in pulling the DPW and Greenfield Tree Committee together as a collaborative team, which we weren't before, but we definitely are now. So we do a lot of the planting plans that DPW then will go out and plant and things like that. So we work hand in hand, which is
That's awesome.
pretty unheard of in municipalities.
Has had any youth volunteers from the schools or?
Not as many. I mean, it's often a topic that comes up. We planted down at the
School.
Newton School.
Which trees did you plant there? You didn't plant the fruit trees.
Not the fruit trees, no.
I just see all the fruit. I'm like, let's
Yeah.
go pick those
I know.
apples. When I do a field trip.
You can.
Right tomorrow. Yeah, no, I'm gonna. I was gonna go out there.
So thanks for your interest in this.
That's awesome, really.
That's amazing.
Thank you. Right.
Well, if you are interested, I can always potentially reach out and see if there's like a, you know, an NHS group or something like that that would be willing to, or even as like a field trip or something. We need to have curriculum related field trips, but that could be, I'm sure we can find a connection.
Great,
That's awesome.
Thank you so much, Mary. That was a fantastic report to look at.
Yeah.
Are there other questions or comments? I have a few. I wondered about you mentioned about maintenance and trying to recruit folks who live near them. Were these all, when they were on streets, were they all tree belt, or were some actually in the yard?
They were front yards as well. So
Okay.
the US Forest Service grant stipulated that we could plant within 20 feet of a sidewalk in people's yards. Because it's assumed there'll still be public benefit as the trees get larger. Yeah.
And that's a wonderful, again, reaching out, a connecting of community members in this effort of getting
Yeah.
the trees and sustaining them. Did you have any sense of survivability? If I don't know if you guys have checked of how because some are going to fail or likely.
Well, so that's one area in which we have not done as much as I feel like we can do in terms of tracking. We've actually just applied for a grant to do better tracking so we can track from the nursery to when they get planted out in a site, and then we can assess in 5 or 10 years, you know, like, oh crap, all the lindens died, what happened, you know, that kind of thing.
Right.
But I
Right.
would say anecdotally, the losses were really quite minimal, remarkably. I mean, we lost a few trees in the nursery, which is surprising. We were experimenting with growing in grow bags above ground, so they're not buried in the ground, they're in pots. And we just, you know, heal them over for the winter time. So we had a few losses, but I would say less than 5%, which is really amazing.
Excellent. And you mentioned this is the end of that grant. It was a 5-year grant. It's fantastic to hear about that you guys took the initiative about the nursery at Just Roots. That is going to continue, and how is
It will
that
continue. Yeah.
how is
So
that
now-
being funded?
Yeah, so now we have to start fundraising again. We've had like a 5-year holiday from having to really fundraise. So that was, the tree committee met this earlier this week, and that was one of our primary topics, was ways to fundraise. But we do need probably around $5,000 a year to just be able to keep adding stock to the nursery and all the related materials that are necessary to grow the trees.
That's not bad.
Bingo night.
Boy, it would be great, I think, to extend to the committee, this committee's appreciation of their work, which I'm hearing, because it is such a wonderful private-public collaboration. And when I first came to town, I joined the tree committee, which was at that time an official town committee. I got sworn in by the select board, but
That's interesting.
yeah, but it's just a wonderful, private effort, and this is a fantastic record of the benefit to the
Thanks,
town.
George.
That's great. Yeah. I know that. Oh, yes. I'm sorry, Hannah.
I'm so sorry. I have to go.
Yep.
And I just realized that there is one more thing on the agenda that requires a vote, and I
Yep.
was wondering if I can leave a vote behind.
Well, I was just about to say
Can I
that.
do
So
that?
we were going to go to 6:15, but we can't because Hannah's going to leave. We'll have no
I'm so
quorum.
sorry.
So
Yeah.
so the minutes, we could either run through them quickly now, or we could table them, whatever the committee prefers.
Let's
If we
do
can
them
do
now, if we can.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the November minutes?
I'll make a motion.
Okay. And is there a second?
Sure.
Any discussion? I'll just quickly, oh, go ahead, Mary.
Nancy,
Well, maybe we're all gonna say the same thing, but the, who was there, that area, there were a couple of errors on it. Amy Callahan was present, and Marlo came late, but he's noted as not being there, but he was there for a large portion of the meeting.
Yeah, he's actually noted as both being there and not being there, but he's quoted
Exactly.
several times. So
Exactly.
He's
we
an
should probably
amazing person.
taking off the absent list.
Really.
I'll also technically point out that beside my name, it says co-chair, but it's actually vice chair.
I was wondering about that. Thank you.
Yeah. And near the bottom of the first page, where that I was going to review the master plan to see where the ag committee is referenced, not ag land.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So, yep. And finally, again, technically, and the very last, it was voted to adjourn the meeting. I can't adjourn the meeting. A facilitator or chair can't adjourn the meeting. The committee has to adjourn the meeting. So I can start the meeting as facilitator, but I can't adjourn it. So with those changes, if there's no objection, all in favor of approving those minutes? Aye. Seeing, is that unanimous? Can't see anybody.
I abstain from. not being
Abstain.
there.
Thank you very much. Okay. And are there any pressing announcements as Hannah packs up and starts to leave the room? No, it's okay.
I'm sorry, I missed who moved to approve and who seconded.
Hannah moved to
Aye.
approve, and
I seconded.
Joanne second.
Oh, you did it, okay.
Thank you all so much.
all right, all in favor of adjourning?
I will be in touch with you to take my job.
Yes.
I'm not in favor of adjourning yet. Do we have to?
We have to because the quorum just left.
We have no
We
quorum.
can't meet at all.
You can't do any business.
Okay,
We can just chat among ourselves, I suppose.
so is that right, George? We're done.
We can't officially continue the meeting with no
Okay,
quorum.
thank you.
Sure.